and welcome to another episode of That's Crap Detection. I'm your host, Dean Venderman, and today I have a very special guest. She's a returnee, so I guess the first chat we had was pretty good. I'm talking to Dr. Verena Roberts today. She is a K-12 and a higher educator. She's an open learner. She's also an elephant in the room examiner, a soccer and volleyball mom, expanding access to learning and opportunities for all. And she's currently working at two places, the Workland School of Education in Calgary, Alberta, and she's also working at the University of Victoria in their Faculty of Education program. Welcome, Verena. How are you today?
I'm good. How are you, Dean? Nice to see you. It's good to see a cheerful face in this time of unprecedented events, as we know.
Yeah, we just have to roll with it and make the best of the situation. Hopefully there's lots of silver linings. And I've noticed that a lot too. Even looking on Twitter, a lot of people are coming together and helping each other out, sharing resources. So, some things like this can bring out the best of people and sometimes the worst, but I like to focus on the best of people. And I have seen a lot of that, for sure. So here's hoping.
I agree. I
Yeah.
agree.
So I know you do a lot of work with open education. Just for people listening and or watching, what does that entail?
Open education in particular focuses on access to learning for everyone and anyone around the world. So when you are thinking about designing for your classroom, for example, if you're in K-12 or if you're in higher ed, you start off by thinking about learning design to share. So designing for sharing. So that means leaving things as open as possible in terms of public access, but also creating things in ways that it can be remixed and reused by teachers in different ways around the world and globally. And I always think of it as, in the future, if heaven forbid someone were ever to have cancer in my family, there might be that one kid somewhere that had the opportunity to access learning that he or she wouldn't have otherwise had, and I know that I had an opportunity to help them out. So it's the butterfly effect. I think that's what they call it. Shannon Wheatley's butterfly effect too. Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, no, that's great. Actually, that leads into what we're our topic of today with digital citizenship and media literacy, and we're going to focus this a little bit on fact checking, but I'm sure that plays a role in open education too, because when you let go like that, there's a lot of access and opportunity for maybe misinformation to creep into some of the assignments because it might not be as structured as traditional ways, but there's so many learning opportunities in that. So, is there a time that you've run into a problem with fake news as an educator, either as a teacher or maybe even in your personal life? And how did you use this as a teachable moment?
Well, just as you were talking, you gave me another thought and example, but I did have a first, so I'll go with the
That's
first.
good. That's what the conversation's about.
Yeah, no, I'm going to go with my gut reaction, the one. So I'm thinking when, in particular, if we give an example from open education, which is really interesting. So we have a lot of educators who share their resources online, and they encourage people to share, like use it, remix it in different ways. And I remember this one example where they were talking about, it was a settler and colonial theme, like a unit plan. And it was really interesting. It was about people in wagons going all over the West and what they were collecting, and it was a giant scavenger hunt until someone pointed out that what kind of underlying messages are being sent when we're sharing this kind of content, and when we think of it from Indigenous perspectives or from different perspectives of the people who might have seen it in a different way.
Right.
Especially, yeah. And so the good thing about it, though, I thought, was that yes, that content and that teacher ended up pulling their content because they just felt really embarrassed and they didn't like the criticism. On the other hand, what I learned from it was to definitely think about those perspectives, or to accept that you will always have criticism and feedback, especially in open communities and online groups, but also that I don't think you need to take away that content or hide it, but instead remix it, revisit it, reconsider it from multiple perspectives. And so that's going into like the whole fake news aspect. I remember I was teaching last year. Well, I was doing my dissertation, but I was co-teaching at the same time. And the fake news that came up was that like social media causes anxiety specifically for everyone, like without a doubt, and that teenagers should stay away from social media because basically it's evil. So the students were doing a project that looked at the fear of missing out, the idea of the
Yeah,
fear of
we
missing
talked about
out.
that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, FOMO. And as a result, that was one of the questions that came up, that they found a lot of it wasn't research informed information. It was, there were blogs, or there were messages from teachers, or messages from other people saying that social media was basically evil, as I'm saying. So we encourage them to use some of kind of Howard Rheingold's
Yeah.
ideas, and to go through some of the stages of crap detection and really look at different perspectives and where this information is coming from. And they did, a full inquiry into the idea that social media is that causes anxiety for teens, for all teens. And what they discovered was for themselves is that social anxiety definitely does cause anxiety for some teens. Absolutely. It will
Yeah.
exacerbate it or make it worse. However, what we all need to do is learn those digital literacy skills in terms of balance, and thinking about what we're looking at, and thinking about different perspectives, and thinking about our screen time. So that balance aspect was far more important than the fear of just being anxious and the fear of missing out. It was, how do we develop digital literacies for our students so that they don't feel anxious,
Right.
or that they don't feel intimidated by thinking about social media in different ways. Although, like we were just talking about before we started airing, so there's a difference between social media for learning and integrating it into the possibilities of learning, and
Right.
just letting kids go on social media and be with each other.
Right.
I mean, I was a child of the 80s, I will own that, and I wouldn't have been very impressed if my parents went on my telephone calls and jumped in. So why, as educators, why do we
That's a
jump
good
in?
point.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But getting back to the fake news part, what was really interesting is when the students investigated this from an angle, they called it fake news by the end, because they felt that certain people had created filter bubbles. And I think you've talked about filter bubbles before, so
Yeah.
I'll use that. Yeah, I can use that here, to create the idea that all social media is bad.
Right.
And then their strategy for solving that was to use or to encourage and promote the development of digital literacy skills to encourage balance in your life.
Right. Yeah, and I love what you're saying too, and you're answering a lot of question number two already about strategies. I'm going to ask you another
Sorry.
question with that in a bit, though. No, no, that's perfect. That's what this is about. But also something we've talked about in class a lot too, and then I've seen other work. Like I know, I'm not sure if you're familiar with Jennifer Cassatt, but
Yeah.
always, yeah, it's not only just the fear of missing out and the kind of that, but we can also use social media for positive things and positive movements and to maybe alleviate things like mental health, because you have your back. But I really like that social aspect. I never made that connection to the phone call and listening. Yeah, get off the phone, talking. That's a really good point. And then to be able to, you got to let go sometimes too, and trust that the kids are going to be doing the right things under, you got to guide them a little bit and give them some parameters, but ultimately they need to learn and some and figure things out for themselves a little bit too. You got to sometimes take the training wheels off and let them go. But so what are some of the tools that you use when you say you do crap detection, or you're looking at things that you learn on social media? Is there any specific tool that you might use?
So you said that you looked at Snopes and that kind of thing, but this is the one in particular. This is the one I meant. So we can start from here. The media bias chart. So this was the number one thing for all teens and anyone that I've ever worked with anywhere. This blows their mind the most. And I think it is because you just sit there and look for what you happen to listen to personally, and you're more likely to speak up and talk about it. And then people say, well, I really didn't think this one should be this side or this one should be that side. So the point of all of that is you start talking about perspective and the fact that there are different perspectives in media. And that regardless if you are in the middle and listen to NPR or ABC every day, which I would disagree is in the middle all the time,
Right.
then you do have to consider other perspectives and what they look like, for sure. Yeah, so
Definitely.
that was the big one that I was just
Yeah,
trying to fill. Yeah.
that is a great tool. Actually, another a fellow student in my class, Curtis Barassa, when I interviewed him for our podcast slash YouTube series, he brought up the exact same chart too. So it's definitely a gooder, if I can use that term.
Murder.
Yeah, it helping people fact check and seeing where their biases might lie for sure.
The other thing, have you ever seen this Mozilla activity? You might like this. This one's pretty cool, where it's the Hack the News. Can you see this one?
Yeah, definitely.
Well, okay, so you go in and you put on what's called the X-ray goggles, and you can literally change the headlines. Have you done this one?
I haven't, no, but I actually, I was just watching a video from another student in our class, and he started off his video with 6 headlines, and 3 were fake news
Yeah.
and 3 were true. And he said he changed. So maybe he used this as his catalyst. I'm not sure, but I saw
Yeah.
something similar.
Yeah. Now, what's fascinating about this is literally you can go into any classroom or show exactly that, your students, and you can change the news and they will just take it as is. And even if there's some crazy suggestions on it. So that, but what's interesting is looking at how you did it and how easy it is for us to do it. Although many of the news sites, since I have played with this, is they don't let you do it
Right.
anymore. Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Well, pretty soon we'll be doing that with video, with deep fakes and stuff too.
Well, there is, have you seen the deep fake? There's a, speaking of that, there's a deep fake website where you just have constant pictures of people that have never been created before.
Okay, I've never seen that.
I will find the link to that one. I'm not gonna like Google it right now,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
all you do is you click on it, and it's somebody who looks like you or I, and they're like, yeah, we just totally made that person up. We
Wow.
just totally made that person up.
Yeah, it's
And
getting
then
scary out there.
well, it is. And then when we're talking about the other thing that I'm thinking of with strategies, like as we've gone online, from the higher ed point of view, I'm going to leave all these open so people can see them. From the higher ed point of view, they're more concerned about assessment and the fact that, are we really assessing the student in online environments? So it's not just fake news, it's fake student.
Right. No, that's true. Yeah. A good
So
point.
that I mean, in online worlds, we've dealt with that in different ways. And so that is just another reason why you want to use kind of what Reingold suggests and use multiple ways to check. Is this really the student? And, you know, have them do different work, have them connect in a face-to-face environment, that kind of thing. So
Yeah, do the triangulation.
triangulation for sure. Yeah. So there you
Awesome.
go.
So I agree. I love what you're sharing here, and that kind of, lots of ways to be critical thinkers, definitely out there. But how do you find the balance between being a critical thinker and then just being a cynic and thinking everything online might not be true? How do you create a balance with this, even yourself or with the students?
So when you think something is true and you send it out there, I know I sent out something from the Onion years ago, and I didn't realize it was from the Onion. And an Onion is like a satirical kind of site or whatever, we'll just say. And I thought it was true. I can't even remember what it was. And then someone kind of called me on it and said, that's a joke, right? Like,
Yeah.
so they call you on it. I don't think that in this world that we can be, like we have to, we can't save face, put it that way. We have to be humble and we have to
Right.
accept that we make mistakes. And then when we make those mistakes, we make sure that we are honest about it. I mean, I remember teaching science in grade 6, and I got phases of the moon and eclipses mixed up, I think it was, or
Yeah.
something like that. I literally taught them the wrong things all day. And then I had to go in the next day and go, I completely taught you it the wrong way. So I don't think it's any different than when I would teach in a face-to-face environment and just have to go be honest and be authentic. And I think it's really important that students see your vulnerability and realize, I mean, in this time and age, it's really difficult to ever think of yourself as an expert. Not
Yeah.
that I do, but I think it's almost wrong to think of yourself as an expert because people can check everything.
Yeah.
Like,
I really like what you're saying, and it kind of makes me think, like, we've talked a lot about digital identity in class as well. So if people can check out your digital identity and if you build up, for lack of a better way of saying it, maybe a reputation online, if you do make a mistake, they know who you are, and they know that you're humble and that you're authentic with it, and that you'll own up to it and use it as a learning opportunity, rather than, oh, they posted this one thing, they made a mistake, this is how they think all the time, or whatever, right? because prejudice and stereotype can, work its way onto your, social media or your digital identity as well. So I really like what you say there about, just creating that, era of humbleness and authenticness and authenticness. I'm not sure if that's a word, but I'll make that one up. But I really do like what you're saying there too, and that's definitely a good way to keep that balance. And because we're going to make mistakes, I agree with you 100%.
Well, I did, and that reminds me of another example. I was asked to support an online learning program up in Alaska. And specifically, it was to support front-end healthcare workers out in communities, remote communities, where they would have access or they wouldn't have access to Wi-Fi. So we were trying to figure out online solutions for them because they couldn't bring everybody in for professional learning and support all the time. And they really needed support in these frontline communities. And so, ironically, many online learning startups for projects are everyone comes together in a face-to-face environment. So the first thing was that I had to go over the border to go. And so I remember the customs agent saying, well, where are you going? And I'm like, oh, I'm going to work on this online course. And I remember him looking at me going, well, if you're working on an online course, why do you have to go up to Alaska? And the moment was, well, you have to build that relationship so that they can see that you're really who you are. And then when I got there, the elder says to me, yeah, we had a great conversation. She's like, yeah, we've been tracking you for like 3 months. And I said, pardon me? So exactly what you just said. They were tracking to see what I talked about, what I tweeted, who I connected with. And my bias was like, wow, I don't think anyone ever watches what I do. But they were literally watching me because they're like, we're not going to let anybody come into our community.
That's a great
we are very, we will, and not only did we track you for 3 months, we had to meet you face to face. Like there were all these checks put into place. And while Howard Rheingold talks about that from a digital lens, this was a different lens. This was a personal lens that I think that we need to do more of as students, for example, when we're just friending everybody or listening to what's going on TikTok. Yeah. TikTok's a great example because they were accused of all the problems with not being more diverse or inclusive. Yeah. And then when you tell your own kids about it, my kids follow TikTok like it's a cult religion. Like explaining to them how you are being affected by only seeing a certain filter bubble. Yeah. So all of that comes into play.
That's a great example and a great story. Thank you for sharing it. Do you have anything else you'd like to add about the topic of digital citizenship or media literacy or fake news?
I don't think digital citizenship is just about behaving yourself online in terms of actually what I mean more by that is I don't think digital citizenship is the same thing as digital literacies. I think they're very different. Digital citizenship is about knowing how to be yourself and an identity online and knowing how much you share and don't share and knowing how to communicate with people and be kind and thoughtful and realize that in YouTube, like I remember my grade 10 students who wouldn't put guitar videos because they couldn't handle the comments. Great. So it's about realizing that you are always a real person, regardless if you're face-to-face or digital environment. That's what digital citizenship is really about. It's about who you are as a human being in online spaces. Perfect. And that includes the cyberbullying aspect and the anxiety and the balance and all of that too. So I think that's, yeah. And I think we mix them up sometimes. And digital literacies to me is huge and wide and all over the place.
No, that's very true. That's what we're finding out in our class too. No, this has been another great conversation. I really appreciate your time again and your expertise. I sit here and talk to you for a longer time, but I really appreciate the conversation. And thanks, Verena, for being a part of the show. I'm Dean Benderman, and this has been another episode of That's Crap Detection. Until next time, know your crap detection. All right. Thanks a lot for watching, and have a great day. Thank you.